Lab number 2. I'm going to review some graphing techniques. We'll do it by hand and also with the calculator. So we'll start with just a basic linear equation. This is in slope-intercept form. Remember, it was y equals mx plus b. M is the slope. The y-intercept is b. So first step would be start at the y-intercept of +2. Then follow your slope, which is 3 over 1, up 3 over 1. You can do that a couple of times. You could even go down 3 and left 1. That's -3 divided by -1, which is still 3. And we've got that line that we draw to connect those dots. How about that? On the graphing calculator, just type in 3. The X is right here beside the green alpha button, and then +2, and hit graph. You'll see that same line there. Okay. The next example, y equals x squared plus 2. If we remember from Math 100, we know it's an x squared, so we know it's going to be a parabola. It opens up because there's a +1 in front of x squared. And then if we remember transformation rules, we know that it just shifts it up 2 units. Another way to do this would be to create a table of x and y values. The first thing that I would do would be find the vertex. The vertex, negative b over 2a. So b is 0 in this case because there's not a plain x value. Remember, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And then 2 times 1 is 2, but 0 divided by 2 is 0. So the vertex is 0, and we plug a 0 in for x there. 0 squared is 0 plus 2 is 2. So the vertex is at 0, 2. So I'll put my point there. And then I would pick x values to the left and to the right of that vertex. So -1 plugged in, -1 squared is 1 plus 2 is 3. -2 plugged in would be 4 plus 2, which is 6. 1 plugged in would be 3. 2 plugged in would be 6. So -1, 3. -2, 6. Same thing on the other side. And there we have the parabola, x squared plus 2. Graphing calculator, you do the same thing. You'd hit X right here beside the green alpha button. The squared button is right here, just diagonally up from 7 plus 2, and then hit graph. And there we see the parabola that we're looking for. Okay. Pretty easy idea there. Next example is the absolute value graph. If you remember from Math 100, absolute value graphs make a V shape always, and they can be graphed using what is similar to the vertex form of a parabola, where here we have a vertex of -2, 0 out of that, so it's shifting to the left 2 units. Out of that, we can get it that way. So -2, 0, a point there. There's a 1 in front of the whole thing that's understood to be there. So the slope on each side is up 1 over 1, but it's up 1 left 1 on the left-hand side because we're going to make a V shape. Another option would be making a table of values for that. Just picking some x values and plugging them in. It's still important to know the vertex there so that you can know kind of where to center your points around to do that. To do this with the graphing calculator, y equals, clear out that one. To get the absolute value, you're going to hit math and then press over to the right, and ABS is absolute value, and then just type in x plus 2, hit graph, and there we see that V shape that we had seen with the hand-drawn graph. Okay. Example 4, it's taking a parabola but putting a stipulation of only for x's that are greater than -1. This is a little easier to do because you really don't have to worry so much about vertex as you do. Just make sure you're picking x values that are greater than -1. Technically, we should pick -1 anyway because -1 is the starting spot, even though it's a non-included point. -1 squared would be 1. So we go to -1, 1, We're going to put an open circle because that point is not included because there's not an equal to mark on the inequality. And then we'll just pick some x values that are greater than -1. 0, 1, and 2 should get us a good shape out of that. So 0 squared is 0, 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4. So we could plot those points. 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, and 4. And we see that's happening with our graph. For the graphing calculator, to get it to graph for a certain part of the domain, which is the x is greater than -1, what you would want to do is put the function itself, x squared, in parentheses. So parentheses, x squared, close those parentheses, hit the division symbol, open up another set of parentheses, and this is where you're going to put your inequality. So we're going to put x, and then to get the inequality symbol, we're going to hit second math, and then number 3 for greater than, and then type in the number -1, close our parentheses, and hit graph, and we see that it only graphs that portion of the parabola that we see there. Okay. Last one, y is equal to x minus 1, but only from -3 is less than or equal to x is less than 5. So it's between 3 and 5. So what we would want to do here is find out we know it's a straight line because the equation is x minus 1. That's slope of 1, y-intercept of -1. But we need to do that for a certain area. The graph is between -3 and 5. So I'm going to find out what's going on at -3 and what's going on at 5. So I plug in -3 for x. -3 minus 1 would be -4. Plug in 5. 5 minus 1 is +4. So at -3, -4, that's where my first point will be, and it'll be a filled in dot because it has the equal to mark there. That's where the filled in dot comes from. Then at 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to put an open circle because that does not have the equal to mark. So it's an open circle. And I know it's a straight line in between because that's a slope intercept form equation. So I'm just going to draw the line. To do this with the calculator, it's a little more difficult. You have to split this into two different inequalities. One of the inequalities is x is less than 5 and x is greater than or equal to -3. Notice how it's still pointing toward the -3 there. And we've got to use both of those in the parentheses for the calculator to do this. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So clear parentheses, put in the function x minus 1, division symbol, and then we're going to put in both of those inequalities. So x second math is greater than or equal to, option 4, -3, second math, and then x is second math less than 5. And then hit graph. And notice how it draws just that portion of the line for that particular graph. So that's lab number 2 for Math 110.